Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Pacific 4 and 4 episode review. I am your host, Mike. As always, this is being streamed on both the Pacific 4 and 4 YouTube channel, and it's also being streamed on the Pacific 4 and 4 Twitch channel. That is until the season finale of Star Trek Discovery, which we're still 4 episodes away from that. So you still have 4 more episodes that you're going to see here on the Twitch channel before it goes exclusively back to the Pacific Forward for YouTube channel. So if you like this, please go ahead and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube channel right now. And if you're not watching on the YouTube channel right now, just type in the search engine on YouTube Pacific 4 and 4 and you'll see the logo come up, and click on the icon and hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching on Twitch, please follow this channel. I try to stream a game as often as I can. Lately, it's only been a few days and for a few hours, to be perfectly honest with you, but I would definitely love you to, follow this channel and see, all the different gameplay I do. I do old school games, I do new school games. Sometimes I'll just start a stream and just start playing just to have fun. I'm not playing for any particular goal in mind, trying to beat the game, trying to, get through the game in a certain time frame. Like, for example, last night, I was playing the Konami Contra Collection Anniversary Edition. And I wasn't really playing that to beat any of the Contra games. I wasn't trying to beat the NES port of it, or, Hard Corps or Alien Wars. I was just playing it just for the sake of playing it and doing a lousy job of it too. But anyhow, in tonight's episode of Pacific 4 and 4 episode reviews, I'm going to be reviewing the 7th episode of Season 2 for The Mandalorian, The Believer. And if you've never watched Pacific 4 and 4 episode review before, I'm just going to let you know I never use any video clips from the episode. I never use any audio clips. I never use any stills from the episode. I just go off on the episode talking briefly about what happened. I do tend to skip over some things, so if that's something you don't like, I understand. But anyways, in The Believer, episode 7 of season 2 of The Mandalorian, it starts off at a scrapyard, and you see Imperial remnants of TIE fighters all over the place. And it's all scrap. It's rusted out scrap. And it's where Mayfield's being held by the New Republic, because you see a New Republic security droid walk up to Mayfield, give off his prisoner ID number, and of course, Mayfield's trying to drill into the whole freaking thing of a TIE fighter, or doing something. He's just trying to collect scrap. Is what he's trying to do. He's an inmate. He's doing what he has to do on the yard. And the droid calls him. Of course, Mayfield's none too pleased and tells him I'm busy. And the droid calls him again, and Mayfield ignores it. And then the third time, the droid walks up to him, and the droid says that this is New Republic Marshal Cara Dune. You have been assigned to go with her. You're being transferred. And of course, Mayfield doesn't believe it, and he doesn't go off with her at first. And Cara Dune doesn't say anything, and the droid even brings out a baton to kind of motivate him because it's electrified. So eventually, Mayfield does end up going with Cara Dune, but Mayfield keeps asking Cara Dune, "Okay, where are we going? Why are you taking me?" And she never answers. So he does follow her, and they walk all the way back over to where Slave 1 is. And when they get there, he sees Boba Fett, but he first assumes that it's, Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, or Mando, however you want to call him and says, "Oh, geez, for a moment there, I thought you were another guy." And Mayfield's told to get on board, and then he does see Mando, and you know they have their greeting. How you doing, Mando? And Mando tells him, "I've got a job for you." And long story short, and that's nothing I say in my reviews a lot. In case you're new to these reviews, I do tend to say long story short quite a bit. But anyways, everybody and Fennec Sean too. Don't want to forget about her, but they all get on board Slave One, and they're gonna be on a destination to this place called Moyar. I forget the name of what the planet was, but anyways, it's where this Imperial refinery station is, and the reason why they need to go to this Imperial refinery station is because there's a computer system that'll be able to help them locate Moff Gideon's star cruiser. So they end up going to this planet, and they start discussing their plan once they get to the planet. And Boba Fett's gonna pick up Mayfield off the roof, while Fennec Shand and Cara Dune are gonna be on the lookout, be snipers. And of course, Mayfield's saying, "Well, who's gonna go with me?" And he's not too keen about, Cara Dune going with him because she's an ex-rebel sharpshooter, and of course, Imperial records will recognize her. And then, Fennec Shand says, "Nope, they'll recognize me too." Boba Fett says, "They'll know my face." So you get the gist of that. And Mando volunteers, and Mayfield even says, "How am I going to explain away a Mandalorian?" And they see one of the transports that have this ore that's highly volatile, and any amount of speed can cause it to go off due to vibrations. And they decide that they're going to go onto this transport. Hold on one second here. All right. Now that that's taken care of. Anyways, Mando and Mayfield and Cara Dune ambushed this transport by getting on top of its roof when it's getting ready to go into this tunnel. And, Cara Dune goes into the transport. She knocks out the driver and the crew chief to make it available for Mayfield and Mando. And then she gets out, and the next thing we see, after an exchange between Mayfield and Cara Dune, is we see Mando walking up in stormtrooper gear, but it's more of the driver's stormtrooper gear. It's like the sandtrooper gear, except it's all gray. So if you've seen Rogue One, or you've seen what the sandtrooper armor looks like, well, that's what Mando's wearing now. And in a sec, he's got his gear, and he tells Cara Dune to take care of it. So Mayfield and Mando are off in this transport, and because of this rhydonium, this highly volatile stuff, they have to keep their speed at a certain limit. And of course, there's comms traffic on the radio system. A transport ahead of them is being told to slow down because their levels are getting too dangerous as far as this rhydonium, whatever it was, is concerned, because if it gets to the red, it's going to explode. And then all of a sudden, out in front of them, in the distance though, they see this large explosion. And the first thing they heard before this large explosion was on the comms of the troopers in that transport coming under attack. So, Mayfield's not feeling too comfortable about it. And of course, another thing that you see in this episode is, they're going through this small little village area, and they're slowing down, passing through, and they're shot of kids and the people there, and Mando's looking outside the passenger window and staring eye to eye with this one kid who's just giving him this glaring look, because Mayfield points out that it doesn't matter if it's the New Republic or the Empire. These people see them as a threat and see them as invading their land, invading the world, invading their home. And, they drive off. There's that explosion that happens to the transport ahead of them. Then these pirates come on these craft and they get on top of the transport. Mando goes out, he fights several of them off and even prevents one from actually using a detonator onto this rhydanium after it's pried open in this hatch that it was in. And he even throws the explosive out away from the transport. It causes one of the pirates' vessels to explode. The other one goes right through it. It's destroyed. And then a few more show up. They get on board. And Mando's in trouble, even though he's able to fend a few off. Because one thing that's also happening during this fight is a few of these pirates are getting run over. One's being knocked off on the side, onto his back, and as it looks like Mando's gonna be overwhelmed, and Mayfield even chimes in saying, "I can't go at this speed over this bridge, Mando." These TIE fighters come out of nowhere and start blasting at the pirates and their transports, and they get to the refinery. They're being saluted and celebrated as one of the transports that's able to make it back, because nobody has made it back during that entire day. And they finally put the transport at rest. They get out of the transport, and Mayfield and Mandel, discuss their plan. They have to go into the officer's mess, because that's where this computer system is that they have to put this data rod in to find out exactly where Moff Gideon's ship is, since it's a data system that's linked to the Imperial network. And Mayfield starts to go, but then he sees a former commanding officer of his and says that he's afraid that that officer is going to recognize him. So Mando volunteers, and one thing, because this happens twice in the episode, it may have happened a third time and I didn't catch it, but what happens is Mayfield, when Mando first puts on the stormtrooper gear, says, "I thought you said you couldn't remove your helmet," and basically calls him out, say, it seems like you'll remove your helmet when it's convenient, and you have no problem putting on a stormtrooper helmet, because when Mando gets into the mess hall to access the computer and get the information he needs, it won't scan his face through the helmet because it needs face recognition in order to access the network. So Mando ends up removing his helmet, which had me wondering, so every 7th episode of The Mandalorian, are we going to see, Pedro Pascal's face as Din Djarin, since it happened last season in episode 7? Who knows? But, he removes his helmet, it scans him, and at the time, the Imperial officer that was the commanding officer at Mayfield is trying to get Mando's attention, and then he walks over to Mando and this computer and says, "You better answer me when a superior officer is speaking to you." And then he asks Mando what his name is, and Mando says, "I'm a chief on one of your transports, And then he gives another wrong answer. And then, of course, Mayfield sees what's going on, and he steps into the mess hall and says that he's TK 3987 or somewhere along those lines. I wasn't really paying attention. The only part I really paid attention to was when Mayfield gave his, which was TK 111. So, you know, they identified themselves using their Imperial IDs, and this Imperial officers Mayfield and Mando, a celebratory drink. I believe the officer's name was Van Bulen, if I'm not mistaken. I probably am. But what ends up happening is they have a toast to one of the events that happened during the war between the rebels and the Empire. It was Operation Cinder. Mayfield actually served during that operation. That's where he knows this particular Imperial officer from. And, we find out a little bit more of Mayfield's backstory, how there were a lot of people lost that day because of this Imperial officer's actions. And this Imperial officer even says to Mayfield, after Mayfield said, that these people wanted their freedom. And he goes along the lines of saying, sometimes people who want freedom don't realize that they don't really want it when something better comes along. So then what ends up happening is Mayfield pulls out his blaster and he shoots the officer dead. And now it's time for Mando and Mayfield to escape. So they go out a window. Of course, beneath them, with this being a refinery and where it's located, located near a waterfall. So, you get this long downward shot showing you how deep the drop is. And yes, a trooper does end up going down that long drop as Mando and Mayfield go for their escape. And Mando lets Boba Fett know that they need extraction, and Boba Fett says get to the roof. So Mayfield and Mando are making their way to the roof. Meanwhile, Cara Dune and Fennec Shand are trying to shoot off anybody that might pose a threat to Mayfield and Mando. And Mayfield and Mando do manage to make their way to the roof. Boba Fett picks them up from Slave One off of the roof. And then next we see is the next scene where it's Mando, Mayfield, and Cara Dune, and they're talking, and Cara Dune told Mayfield at the beginning of this episode, when Mayfield, was told that he's going on this mission because Cara Dune has this mission for him. So what do I get? My freedom? And she tells him that that's not part of the deal. But long story short, that ends up being part of the deal because Mando and Cara Dune agree that Mayfield was killed during this mission. So Mayfield's given his freedom. Mando has his information. He, Cara Dune, Fennec Shand, and Boba Fett are on Slave One. And the next scene that we see is on board Moff Gideon's Imperial Star Cruiser. And Moff Gideon's being told that he has a message. And that message is from Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself, telling Moff Gideon that the child means more to him than he'll ever know, and that he's coming to rescue him. And it leaves it for the season finale next week, which I know last week I said that I was hoping there'd be some sort of Magnificent Seven moment. I'm still hoping for that moment because I'm still leaning very strongly toward Mando Din Djarin reaching out to Bo-Katan to have her, Wolves, and Reeves join him on this rescue mission, since they do have a Star Destroyer that they could use to attack Moff Gideon's Star Cruiser. But we'll see what happens there. overall, I didn't think this episode was half bad. I didn't think it was as good as last week's, but still, it wasn't half bad. And as I've said before during my reviews, any episode of The Mandalorian is better than Star Trek Discovery. And yes, I know, yesterday's Star Trek Discovery episode, I was about to call it Terra Prime when it was Terra Firma. But, it was just, one of those campy mirror universe episodes you can't expect much. But as far as The Mandalorian is concerned, it's good. I mean, yeah, I do wish it was longer. I do wish it was at least 45 minutes for the episode, not counting credits, but I mean the episode itself. I wish it was 45 minutes. Because you got to figure it'd be an hour-long time slot. And if it was back on syndication, like some shows were back in the early days, or even a network, it would probably only be 30 minutes because you have all those commercials. But this episode in total was 33 minutes. Still, I wish it was longer. But I'll take what I can get. I will happily take what I'll get from The Mandalorian. But I really did enjoy this episode. Like I said, I didn't think it was as good as last week's, The Tragedy, but, it was still a good episode. And, I'm not sure how long next week's episode is going to be, with it being the season finale, but hopefully it's a long episode and a good episode. And hopefully our heroes are able to prevail and rescue Grogu. Because that's another thing. We did not see anything that was happening with Grogu in this episode. We only got one scene on board Moff Gideon's cruiser, and that was when Mando sent him the message saying he's coming for Grogu. So, again, it'll be interesting to see, what happens next week. So, we shall see. But again, I did like this episode. And I'm going to ask, because I always ask. And maybe you already have, and I do appreciate that. And maybe you haven't yet. Maybe you're waiting. Who knows? But if you could do me a favor, follow me on the Twitch channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share this video if you like. If you like what I do here on the Pacific Forum 4 Twitch channel or the Pacific Forum 4 YouTube channel, again, let me know in the comments. I will answer, and if you would like, you can follow me on social media. And yes, heed that warning, because you never know what I might say sometimes. But as you can see, I've got my social media page up there. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, if you like what you see here, again, leave a comment, follow, subscribe, all those good things. And I do want to let you all know that I will be back at 8:30 Eastern Time tonight, and I'll be continuing my Yakuza 6 Spirit of Life campaign. And I'll be doing that on the Twitch channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, it will not be on YouTube. It will be on the Pacific 414 Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Pacific 414 if you're watching it on the YouTube channel. So I welcome one and all to that stream, because that's why I say welcome one and all. Because I don't care if it's one viewer, two viewers, 3, 4, 5, however many people come to these live streams, the more the merrier. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. I will see you all at 8:30. And until then, I will see you later. Take care.